We have watched this state become essentially unlivable for working class people, and it makes me deeply angry. My name is Graham Plattner, and I'm running for U.S. Senate in Maine to defeat Susan Collins. A decade of military service going overseas, farming oysters to feed my community, diving to lend a hand to other fishermen, trying to start a family. But everywhere I've gone, it seems like the fabric of what holds us together is being ripped apart by billionaires and corrupt politicians, profiting off of destroying our environment, driving our families into poverty, and crushing the middle class. I did 4 infantry tours in the Marine Corps and the Army. I'm not afraid to name an enemy, and the enemy is the oligarchy. It's the billionaires who pay for it, and the politicians who sell us out. And yeah.
We are back, and we are joined now by Graham Plattner, Democratic candidate for U.S. Senate in Maine, hoping to take on Susan Collins in the general election in 2026. Graham, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
You are not apparently just a listener to the Majority Report. You previously called in, which is amazing. So this is...
in fact, what's very funny is that it was a couple of years ago now. And I was on. I would call in some days when I was out on the oyster farm, and the one day that I actually made it through, a thunderstorm hit in the exact same moment, and so I was trying to talk to Sam while the quality was just horrific. And, yeah, it was. I was like, of course, this is the moment. This is the moment.
I'm sure
quality is significantly better, so that's good.
That's good. That's good. I mean, we have the power of video calls now and Wi-Fi. I really appreciate you coming on today. I'll start off with another kind of cheeky question here. Can you promise us that you will not be another John Fetterman?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great.
I saw a tweet yesterday that said, Graham Plattner's God apologizing for John Fetterman, which I got a very hearty chuckle out of.
Well, I mean, for starters, you are unambiguous in your condemnation of Israel's genocide in Gaza. You use that term.
Democratic leaders here in Washington, they're desperate, really, to beat Susan Collins in their quest for the majority. But they're looking at your state's Democratic governor, Janet Mills. They think she would be the best candidate if she runs. So why shouldn't the party consolidate around a battle-tested 2-term governor who has proven repeatedly she can win statewide?
Battle-hardened.
Don't put Janet Mills in the dishwasher.
Looking at your state's Democratic governor, Janet Mills, they think she would be the best candidate if she runs. So why shouldn't the party consolidate around a battle-tested 2-term governor who has proven repeatedly she can win statewide?
Repeatedly.
If we keep running the same kinds of playbooks, if we keep having DC choose candidates for Maine that don't always represent a good, the entire electorate of the state, then we run the risk of having another 2020.
So if she runs, the governor, Janet Mills, would you drop out of the race?
No. We're going to run the campaign we want.
All right.
Do you have confidence that Democratic leaders know how to change this very negative public perception about your party?
No. I'm doing this because I feel that we need to rebuild the party from the ground up. There was a time when this was a party that actually represented the working class, when it represented unions, when it represented big structural changes that were going to help working people. We haven't had that for a real long time. And there's a lot of finger pointing about who's to blame. But truthfully, I just think that at its core, we need to really start rebuilding from the ground up and turning the party back into a party of the working class that goes and fights for the working class.
So to that point, I mean, if you win next year, your first vote would be on choosing the next Democratic leader.
Okay, I'm sorry. Just pause it again. To that point about remaking the party to represent the interests of the working class.
Next little ditty is dedicated to you.
My guitar is fighting me right now. Here we are.
But they'll complain and complain and complain and complain and complain. Like this.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, your next senator from the state of Maine, Graham Plattner.
Well, until recently, I thought that harbor master of Sullivan, Maine was going to be the extent of my political career. And now I am here. Everyone in Maine knows in their bones that the system is screwing us.
Solidarity forever. Thank you all.
There was a speech yesterday in Portland, Maine, part of the Fight Oligarchy tour. Just to give you a sense of the size of this rally, Brian knows this facility well, right? What is it?
It used to be called the Cumberland County Civic Center. Now it's got some corporate name right in downtown.
Because Cumberland County Civic Center is so sexy.
It's so iconic, you know. Everybody, it's like the Garden.
You going to Cumbies? Is that where would they say? Are you going to Cumbies?
Cumbies is a corner store in Maine.
No, I know. Cumberland Farms. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
In Massachusetts, say you're going to Cumbies.
All right.
Shut up, you
too
two.
much. But take a look at the size of this. This is a lot of people to be in a political rally, right? I mean, this is like the biggest facility in Maine.
Yes, largest arena.
Good.
Packed, dude.
For a primary challenge, and the primary isn't for another 9 months.
I don't ever remember seeing anything like this.
And the biggest applause line here also gives an indication of what this energy
Well, that's
means.
another story. We'll get to that in a second. Watch this.
Everyone in Maine knows in their bones that the system is screwing us.
Folks seem to appreciate what he had to say there.
About Gaza, too.
Well,
I mean, that's the biggest line.
Our taxpayer dollars can build schools and hospitals in America, not bombs to destroy them in Gaza.
You are unambiguous in your condemnation of Israel's genocide in Gaza. You use that term.
Gaza.
That is what I think is fascinating about that line. I mean, it was the reaction was huge.
Gaza.
And obviously the idea that we should be doing more with our tax dollars and we shouldn't be funding a genocide.
Genocide in Gaza. You use that term.
Gaza.
I'm here at Bunker Brewing in Portland, where Graham Plattner spoke to hundreds of Mainers tonight as he hosted his second town hall.
I'm running for U.S. Senate because we live in a system that I think almost all working Mainers know is screwing them.
Plattner, a Marine and Down East oysterman, is a political newcomer who appears to be swiftly building a brand by tapping into progressive anger, saying his priorities include protecting women's rights, the LGBTQ community, and Social Security.
You know, he has the outsider perspective. He's coming to this from a working class perspective.
As you've probably seen, there's a story that's broken about comments I made on Reddit in an earlier part of my life.
It is establishment money.
The infantry was a very male-dominated place. It's a very masculine world. When I was in, women weren't allowed in the infantry. It's changed now, and that's a good thing. But when I got out, I still had the crude humor, the dark feelings, the offensive language that really was a hallmark of the infantry when I was in it. And as I watch, or as I read through the comments that were released, I can see myself changing. My language gets less crude, my thoughts and my feelings get a lot less kind of rough around the edges. I do get almost more disillusioned though, and it's important to know that this was a time in my life where I was struggling deeply.
I mean, not only, I think, should people assess this as whether it's, taking accountability and addressing the stuff that he wrote and the state of mind he was in?
Like it's the worst of the cancellation piece here, where he should be able to show that he's changed and grown, because that could be the message to the young men that the Democrats are trying to win over.
Democratic Senate candidate Graham Plattner is responding yet again to another controversy.
The tattoo is a skull and crossbones that closely resembles the Totenkopf symbol that was worn on Nazi uniforms.
Plattner says he got the tattoo in Croatia in 2007 as a young Marine when he was drunk and just picked out the image from options on the wall.
I am not a secret Nazi.
Plattner doesn't say when he realized it resembles a Nazi symbol.
Unless you're doing some like Grateful Dead subversion, we're we're rejecting the potency of this thing by draining it of its meaning. I don't know.
Now, Plattner also talked about Reddit post that surfaced on Friday that includes a response to a post about underwear designed to prevent sexual assault, in which he wrote, people should, quote, take some responsibility for themselves and not get so, quote, effed up they wind up having sex with someone they don't mean to, end quote. Now, Plattner says at the time that he made those comments, he had very little interaction with women in the service.
Very soon after, actually, this time frame, when I started going to college, I became very close friends with a number of vets, female vets at George Washington, and all of them had a story. And I very quickly changed my tune. I think you'll find even not that much later in my Reddit history, me acknowledging that.
Quote, why don't black people tip? Plattner says he was legitimately curious if there was a cultural explanation. And soon after, he says he had a conversation with a black friend about structural injustice.
Not at
the
all.
DC political class is telling me he's cooked. They told me that Donald Trump was cooked probably 35 different times.
Yep.
Or more than that.
Now, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, who backed Plattner over the summer, is still standing by him, telling a CNN reporter, quote, I personally think he is an excellent candidate.
He nails this right on one of the MSNBC shows.
Well, I was born in 2000, which means that the candidates from my generation are all going to have history of comments that they made online.
There you go.
As they're going to be a purity test in every single election. I think that we ought to accept and support people taking accountability.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you even begin to argue with that? How do you even begin to argue with that? All you have to do at that point is just walk away.
I was in a locker room changing. I look over at one of my, fellow soldiers, and I look over, he has a hammer and a sickle tattooed on his chest, crossed, And so obviously, sort of famous symbol, you can't really, confuse it for much else. So I asked him, I said, what is that? Are you a leftist, a communist? He sighs and more or less tells me, no, he got the tattoo when he was young because he's of Russian descent and he thought it was a symbol for Russia. Right.
And I just remind people too, 2007, in those years, you're just coming into high bandwidth internet. So unless you're looking for something and you want to spend 15 minutes for your dial-up to land you there, it's not like these things. I mean, I will say this. I had never heard the word Totenkopf before this.
I mean, what Plattner represents is a new way of doing politics. And we can have people write in saying DSA should run somebody, X this should happen, X that he doesn't have a clean record, he's got we should have somebody different. Oh, the cat's out of the bag here. I mean, that's not even the right phrase for it.
How many people get tattoos that they thought looked cool but didn't understand the meaning of? How many vets took mercenary work for a period because the US doesn't support them? How many young men have shitposted online? Do we want an authentic working class party or not? President Plattner.
We got it because we're Nazis. I think it's pretty much dead story.
Dub. My issue with Plattner isn't as much the tattoo as the fact he bragged about getting to kill people when he was in the military. Yeah, that the militaristic part of him that was in the Reddit posts obviously is the worst part.
You stood firm with a lot of other voices on the left as there was a big rift. He has survived all of that. I don't know how Janet Yellen comes back from this. She's like the most unpopular Democratic governor in the country. And I don't know. It seemed like they emptied the clip on him and he still
Janet Mills.
We got a big one for y'all today. We have the conversation coming up with Graham Plattner. And I'll tell you what, it really surprised me. And I'm looking forward to hearing everybody's reactions to it.
Welcome, Left Reckoners. I'm Matt Leck. With me, as always, David Griscom. Hello, David.
Hey, Matt. Happy to be here.
I am happy to be here as well, and to be joined by Graham Plattner. Graham is an American oyster farmer, harbor master, military veteran, and candidate for Democratic nomination for U.S. Senate in Maine, and a very strong one at that. Graham, thanks for joining Left Reckoner.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate you having me.
Now, Graham, you reached out early in your race, and I'll be honest, I have a sort of pattern response that I give to people when they reach out saying, hey, listen to your show, think about running for office. My first thing is don't go into debt and create a big problem with that. But before I could even say that to you, like this is our first time speaking face to face, you went out and took a lead in this primary. I'm just curious, like this has happened very quickly. What's your relationship been to Mainers and this country? How has that changed in this brief period of this run for office, where you've been sort of invited into Mainers' hearts?
It's I'll be honest, it's real. It's very surreal. But none of this is going to matter.
Well, Matt, that was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
Very fun and surreal experience to finally get a chance to talk with Graham.
It's interesting having a listener on the program. It's always fun.
Yeah, it's always good to talk with listeners.
Speaking of loving the country, we got a problem in Maine. I did a video just before it came public that he had a Nazi tattoo on his body. That I didn't know what it was. I'm a history buff, he said in interviews, but also I didn't know what that was. Doesn't make any sense. And that's when I disavowed him. And I don't believe he's a fellow United States Marine. And now we're learning that it wasn't just the Nazi tattoo. His old Reddit post coming out that black people don't tip. Where's that tweet? And not only that, I guess that's just a couple of just oopsies. The Nazi tattoo on the chest was an oopsie. The retweeting of a famous Holocaust-denying white supremacist was an oopsie. He deleted this, by the way. And now he went on a podcast with Valhalla.
Thank you so much for coming on, man.
As a longtime fan of the show, it's an absolute pleasure being here.
He says things that line up with leftist ideas and progressive ideas. And look, there's a lot of people out there that are still supporting Graham Plattner. The crooked media guys have had this guy on multiple times defending him. There are many others, people I respect, who are still behind Graham Plattner.
You are not apparently just listeners to the Majority Report. You previously called in, which is amazing.
Hey, listen to your show.
It's interesting having a listener on the program. It's always fun.
Yeah, it's always good to talk with listeners.
As a longtime fan of the show.
What bridge is too far?
Graham Plattner, welcome to Death, Sex, and Money.
Thank you.
So we say our show is about the things we think about a lot and need to talk about more. Often that's very personal stories. Another thing we're concerned about is how systems affect people. Something I'm in particular interested in is where our systems are failing people.
And I'm not doing it because I want to be a U.S. Senator. I think the U.S. Senate is a place of institutional power that we need to engage with to fight for working people in this country.
I've read through probably all the Reddit stuff, only looking for my name, really.
Control F.
Yeah. But I literally did read through it because that's what. But he was a fan of this program. He was a big fan of Michael's, fan of Left Reckoning.
Harvey K, bro.
And a big fan of Harvey K.
Cited his book in a recent thing.
Yeah. And you can see his evolution in there. I understand how a tattoo can be a data point but you really, in and of itself, that doesn't quite do it for me. And it really is in and of itself.
The fan of his who argued with me when I described being raped, because if they had accepted my definitions, then they too would bear the label of rapist. The social climber who told me it was more dangerous to leave without a plan, money, or a job waiting for me in Maine than it was to just stay put and silently tough it out.
Did you know Graham Plattner wrote that women worried about rape need to, quote,
not get so up they wind up having sex with someone they don't mean to.
It's disgusting. When I see blatant smear campaigns from other Democrats against the only candidate who is meaningfully telling us to wake up and do something to stop the abuse, I feel like I'm being told it's not that bad. Like the establishment is telling me that Graham is not allowed to stand up to anything unevolved now, no matter how much he has changed over 13 years.
Plattner wrote to avoid rape, women should, quote,
act like an adult for sake.
Graham Plattner, seriously.
We blame the victim. That's a horrible thing to say.
I hear in the establishment Democrat attacks on Graham Plattner. I hear a fear of change.
I don't know what she does on the campaign, but when could she start traveling nationally?
I mean, that was a great speech.
He was an angry, disillusioned soldier who spent years in a hyper-male unit of the Marines, who started the hero's journey. Years of therapy, questioning all his assumptions, the myths of his country, to emerge on the other side determined to be a force for change.
Platter did not take any questions today. The Mills campaign quoted several Maine women, including a former candidate for Senate, De'Ara Smith Rodriguez, who writes in part, quote, as a survivor of military sexual assault, I cannot, in good conscience, indicate support or remain silent if there is even a possibility that someone who questions the reality of this crisis could be elevated to the United States Senate.
Plattner has said he regrets the controversial posts, which he says were intended to get a rise out of people.
Feel free to back it up with facts.
Today, he spoke out against AI political ads like the one the National Republican Senatorial Committee posted against him.
We are in an era where AI is going to be abused and is going to be weaponized in political campaigns. That's exactly what we're seeing. What I am witnessing now is the height of horror. And the fact that it is being done by bombs that are built in this country and paid for with our tax dollars is utterly unconscionable, and it needs to end.
Genocide in Gaza, you use that term.
Gaza.
Genocide in Gaza, you use that term. Here is Plattner's answer at this town hall from over the weekend.
Not a single taxpayer dollar should be spent on arming and defending a country that commits a genocide.
Right? That's what we need more of. We need more people who feel like it's their sole mission to save humanity. And
if we held Supreme Court justices to the exact same standards we hold federal judges, there is a compelling case for the impeachment and removal of at least two.
Speaking of strong candidates with the right kind of message, we played Graham Plattner's phenomenal answer, I think earlier this week, on how he would never support funding to Israel and how he thinks that we need to completely reevaluate our relationship with the state in the day after a state that commits genocide, which is just like it.
Genocide.
People want a proactive and addressing these major issues. It should be within our, and this is what was talked about again during civil rights, was like, how do we get past these hurdles, like the Senate filibuster? How do we get these things sort of through? We need to be able, like, there's nothing that's in the Constitution that specifies the number of Supreme Court justices in itself.
26 coverage, Democratic Senate candidate Graham Plattner is apologizing for his use of the R word. The Maine Monitor recently reported that Plattner used that word when he was told one of his tattoos had Nazi ties. That's since covered up. He also used the R word several times as recently as 2021 on Reddit.
I am sorry. I'm sorry that I said it. I am endeavoring to improve every single day. I am not a perfect person, and I continue to try to be better.
Are you ready
to elect a real fighter to go to Washington. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? In that case, welcome the next senator from the great state of Maine, Graham Plattner.
Last summer, end of July, some people came to my house. They had been in Maine for a few months working with the AFL-CIO and a bunch of labor unions, looking for someone to run for U.S. Senate against Susan Collins. And they had found me because I did a video a few years ago fighting against a Norwegian salmon farm that was trying to come into our bay. A bunch of us mobilized against it, and I did a video with the group.
I don't know that there's anything I've ever heard that's more Maine.
Yeah,
than this. A bunch of guys come to my house because they saw your Norwegian salmon video.
Yep, and then they looked me up and they saw I donated to Bernie Sanders.
So before the break, I was saying, you weren't the National Party's pick. For people out there, he wasn't the National Party's pick. Chuck Schumer recruited Janet Mills to run for this race. He quickly endorsed you today. Have you spoken to him today? And what's that relationship like right now?
Yes. No, we had a brief conversation this evening, and I'll just say that nothing brings people together like wanting to beat Susan Collins. So that's where we are.
But you're still not going to support him for leader, are you? Or have you changed your mind on that?
No, I mean, my criticisms of leadership, my criticisms of the party, they remain. Because there is no Democratic majority in the Senate without getting rid of Collins. And I think that for everybody right now is the priority. Everything else, I guess we can hash that out later on.
Trump is obviously a factor in every race in the country. I mean, he's the sitting president. He's hugely unpopular. He started this hugely not just unpopular, but to your point, it's not even a political issue, kind of immoral, misguided, not guided at all, war in Iran. How much of Trump is a factor in this general election against Susan Collins for you in Maine?
You know, it's funny. You know, we all understand that Donald Trump is uniquely awful. Like, I'll be upfront. I have a lot of friends who voted for Donald Trump. I live in rural Maine. I work on the water. I got friends who voted for Trump 3 times. I'll be honest. I mean, as someone that was kind of living a very normal life until about a year ago, this political system as we have it, the average person does not see themselves reflected. We don't see our will. We don't see our material needs reflected in the halls of power. And that's really what we're engaged in.
Fewer young Mainers can afford a place to live. Our paychecks don't go as far. We have to take on extra hours at work just to make rent.
This is a bipartisan opinion. You know, this is
centrists.
This is when, you know, he's sitting on the fence here, and he gets it. He gets it. He can praise certain Democrats too. Tim Pool. Could it be the Nazi tattoo? I actually respect Democrats for saying no to that. Oh, well, that's so that they didn't say no to it.
Sounds
actually.
woke, Tim.
Which Democrats are you talking about? Gosh, it's so surprising that Tim Pool and
John Fetterman
and his new buddy, the son of Benjamin Netanyahu, and Netanyahu himself is praising the Democrats that smeared Graham Plattner, which include the biggest Zionists in the entire Senate.
Senator, your reaction to the Mills news?
I'm sure this was a very difficult decision for Governor Mills, and I wish her well. She has...
when it was clear that this was an issue in the primary and Plattner's position on Israel and Palestine was a boon to him. And she just came out as she's like 30, 40 points down, and she's like, no, I stand with Israel. It's like, I want negative 10 more points.
Right.
An oyster farmer and combat veteran
challenging Republican Senator Susan Collins.
He's faced an onslaught of damaging revelations.
Previous tattoo that resembled a Nazi symbol.
But somehow, against all odds, Graham Plattner is still in the race for Senate. And not only that, according to the latest polling, he's on track to win.
Graham Plattner's campaign for Senate.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Cheers. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Okay, right on time, right?
Ever since people selectively pulled out stuff from Graham Plattner's Reddit files and stuff that was bad, and he's disavowed from years ago. Neglected to pull out other stuff that might suggest that he, or not suggest, I mean, well, some might suggest that he was actually rather left. The Bangor Daily News in 2002 notes that Graham Plattner was kicked out of a George W. Bush rally in Bangor, Maine for, oh, jeez.
Bangor.
What did I say?
Bangor.
Bangor, for protesting the, at that time, what many of us assumed was the forthcoming Iraq war by yelling the words, "Don't attack Iraq." Plattner said, "I thought it was the perfect time," Plattner said. He unfolded a small sign he had hidden in his pants pocket and raised it to display words, "No war." I started yelling, "Don't attack Iraq."
I want to thank the grassroots activists who are here. I want to thank the people who take time, who work hard to make sure.
Get this again here.
Yeah, you can hear.
I want to thank the people who take time, who work hard to make sure that the democracy is strong. I want to thank you very much for your efforts on behalf of all candidates. I want to thank you for what you have done. I want to thank you for what you're going to do, and that is to turn out to vote for these candidates on November the 5th.
So there he is. And then it's left a lot of people wondering, how in the world could you protest against the war and then sign up? Now, I don't know what, I mean, it's not a ridiculous question to ask because it's counterintuitive. But it should occur to people that, like, I mean, he clearly was protesting against the war.
I was in this race against Mills and I'm in this race against Collins, and people were like, "These are really working class." I'm like, "Well, they're fucking not." You know, I'll tell you, like, I mean, I've literally worked with my hands my whole life. I don't know how you want to qualify it, but like, they haven't. Right. They came from like historically powerful families. Yes. Yeah, my grandfather was a successful architect. Yeah. I also grew up in Sullivan fucking Maine, and my mom is still working because she has no money. Right. And we're trying to figure out, like, quite frankly, if she can't sell her restaurant, she's got no retirement. Like, my wife and I we're not like broke. I'm sorry, you fucking work for a living. Yeah. You were, and chances are when you go home, when you look at your tax bill as a small and medium-sized business, you probably have moments you're like, fuck, like, we're gonna have to figure out how to make this work.
There you go. All right, love Plattner.
Graham Plattner says the Wall Street Journal and New York Times ran stories without any evidence, based solely on gossip from a former staffer. He says claims made by that staffer, former State Representative Genevieve McDonald, are untrue.
The situation he's in right now that's most uncomfortable, I think, is that he and his wife seem to be telling different versions of the story.
Amy Gertner defended her husband in a video she posted.
I think it's shameful behavior to spend time and energy and resources on negative ads and negative stories on Graham when all he's trying to do is improve the lives of people who work for a living.
She says being newly married while going through infertility and a Senate campaign is hard, but says they are working on their marriage and mental health.
I knew the man that I married had been through an immense amount of violent, active combat. No marriage is perfect, and I don't want a perfect marriage. I want my marriage.
It's no surprise to me that the establishment media outlets are just going to run gossip instead of wanting to talk about the things that actually matter in this race, which are the material realities that the Mainers are working with.
I think people should really, continue to engage with Plattner in the campaign around affordable housing, universal health care, and issues that really matter to us.
But of course, the powers that be do not want us to talk about that.
Graham and I have a great marriage, and we love each other deeply. We deserve better. I think Mainers deserve better.
And so they're going to just do gossip instead.
But the stories are true, right? About the texts?
No. This is the amazing part. The Wall Street Journal and the New York Times ran stories without any evidence besides the gossip from a former staffer.
So are you confirming that the messages did not exist?
What's that?
The messages, they did not.
I'm confirming that what Genevieve McDonald said in the New York Times is not true.
So you never met with her about uncomfortable, for lack of a better word, sexting messages as the campaign was going?
We talked about things in Amy and I's marriage that we've gone through over the years. We talked about that because that's our marriage, and we discussed it with the campaign. What Genevieve McDonald claims isn't true.
All right, now back to what has become a national story as Graham Plattner tries to get his U.S. Senate campaign and his message back on track after a series of damaging reports. And the stakes couldn't be higher, with flipping the seat held for decades by Republican Susan Collins a virtual must if Democrats hope to regain control of the U.S. Senate.
Tonight, Maine Democratic Senate candidate Graham Plattner taking on a major campaign rally ahead of Maine's primary election. It was also his first time addressing voters since a series of allegations shook Plattner's campaign this week, including sexting with other women while in his marriage, which he has admitted to, and allegations of past sexual and abusive relationships with women, which he has denied.
Now, as every single piece of that past and journey gets dug up, litigated, and weaponized, you have my back.
And also at the rally tonight, one of Plattner's longtime supporters, former state senator Troy Jackson. Now, Jackson, a fellow progressive, says he still believes in Plattner and that he believes voters ultimately care more about basic issues like affordability and the economy.
Plattner could have sexted my mom and I'd still vote for him.
People should always be concerned about those things, but, until they're proven or whatever.
So how did we get here? It's been roughly 9.5 months since Graham Plattner launched his U.S. Senate campaign, pitching himself as an oyster farmer and military veteran from Sullivan, Maine, taking on the establishment. Since then, the Democrat looking to unseat longtime Republican U.S. Senator Susan Collins has faced one controversy after another. The first came only 2 months into his campaign, October 2025, when some of Plattner's now deleted Reddit posts were revealed. One asking why black people don't tip, another suggesting that sexual assault victims should take responsibility. Then, also in October of last year, came reports focused on Plattner's chest tattoo, which many said resembled the Nazi SS Totenkopf symbol. He got it covered up after reports came out, showing it first to CBS 13 the next day.
I'm proud of the person I am today.
Well, then came more old Reddit posts reported on in late April and early May of this year. Some involved sexually charged comments involving portable toilets. And then last weekend, after reports from the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, Plattner acknowledged exchanging sexually explicit text messages with other women during his current marriage.
On Graham Plattner, are you satisfied with the explanations he's given for the controversies his campaign has faced right now? Are you concerned about what you've heard?
I met with Graham Plattner today. We're going to beat Susan Collins and take back the Senate.
So we're hearing directly from Mainers who are processing the latest scandal to rock Graham Plattner's Senate campaign.
That's not breaking news for any politician, tell you the truth.
I couldn't care less, honestly.
I mean, look at our president and his track record of things that he's tweeted online or what he's said about women.
Many voters in Maine tell us Democratic Senate candidate Graham Plattner's latest controversy will not change their vote.
Separate what somebody's doing in their personal life and the mistakes or whatever that they've done from how they run politically.
I don't think any differently about him since that story came out.
Now that brings us to last night's reporting from the New York Times, with some of Plattner's former partners describing him as volatile, toxic, and abusive.
This is from the Times. Mr. Plattner could be rough with her, Ms. Fifield said, particularly when they were drinking, leaving her shaken and sometimes afraid. In the interviews, she grappled with how to process her experiences. She was quick to note, he never hit me, he never punched me. She said he regularly grabbed her by the shoulders, sometimes hard enough to leave marks. On one occasion, yanked her out of a cab by her wrist after an argument in which she wanted to stay in the car. During one argument, she recalled he twisted her arm behind her back, shoved her into a bedroom, and held the door closed from the other side so she couldn't get out, telling her to remain there until she was calm. Eventually, Ms. Fifield said she fell asleep and left the next morning. It hurt, she said, but she added, it didn't cause any injury. It didn't break my arm.
Did that happen?
No, it did not.
Did you know what this tattoo was about before last October when you said you first became aware of it?
No, I did not. Totally false.
I do want to follow up one place on this, and I don't want to get too forensic, but, you know, the Times basically reported that they saw texts of hers, including a text in August, I believe August 3rd of last year. This would be before October of last year, in which she basically said that you had a, quote, Nazi tattoo, and she joked about how she's going to go volunteer for Collins. Now, again, this is a text that got sent, so, like, we can place the time, right? This is in August. How does she know it's a Nazi tattoo in August of last year, and you don't know it's a Nazi tattoo in August of last year?
Well, she certainly didn't send that text to me.
I think some people view this as a real betrayal by your former campaign manager, and that may be true, and I understand. And I also watched the video that your wife put out, which I found incredibly compelling and moving, about what you've worked through. Were you sending sexually explicit messages to other women back in 2023, 2024, as reported in the piece?
So this is the first time in my life that Amy and I's marriage has been the interest of people besides Amy and I. And then to have it essentially outed by someone that we put our trust in, who then turned around and betrayed Amy's trust, and has now turned, frankly, our private parts of our marriage into a bit of a public political spectacle. It's hard.
But I do want to just make sure on the timeline, right? Because I think there's two things going through people's heads a little bit here, which is, you know, you have talked about self-medicating with alcohol and being pretty messed up when you got back from the service and trying to figure out what you were doing and doing things maybe you wouldn't stand by now and saying things you wouldn't stand by. But this is 2023. And so there's a difference in the time. And I think the first question is, like, when did this stop? If it stopped, if there was stuff that you're not proud of that you worked out with your wife, you don't want to talk about the details, when did it stop?
Well, it stopped when it was happening. So that's when it stopped.
Are there texts of yours, pictures of yours floating around out there, which, again, maybe from a time capsule, but people, I think, are understandably a little nervous. Maybe you'll be the nominee, probably be the nominee for the Maine Senate on Tuesday. And then it's October 10th, and here's a text or picture of Graham Plattner that is not the kind of thing that you want to see. Like, are you worried about that? Are there texts like that?
I'm not worried about it. I mean, I went, as I've talked to him, I went through my life through a number of years struggling and not exactly acting with the best behavior. I've been very, very open about that. And if people would like to continue to drag things up from that time in my life, I'm sure that we are going to see at some point somebody attempt to do exactly that. Just know that these are things that happened before I became a public figure, before I got into politics, and it's a part of my life that I'm very happy to talk about and talk about the struggles within.
Just to be clear, just about revisiting, right? I mean, I think channeling concerns, I think, of Democratic voters and Democratic officials and a lot of people, right? That it's not a question of revisiting, right? It's new revelations, like vis-a-vis, texts or pictures. And I know you want to give some privacy to your marriage, but I really do feel like I need to get these answers from you, which is like, the people you were texting with, whatever that was, in whatever context, they were adult women, you knew that, and it was consensual. Is that true?
Yes.
And you have that you confirmed that. You knew their age.
Yes. Oh, God. I mean, yeah. Yes, of course.
I look forward to the day where I am not answering every single week a question about bad behavior by another dude. I'm look forward to that day. On camera, live. I look forward to that. And I haven't read, like, the piece, but what my team told me, like, look, frankly, I'm sick of it. We got a lot of bigger issues to, fry here.
What's your response to that?
I mean, the response is that I agree. if there was violence, that's a huge issue. But those allegations are false. And I also agree with the senator that we do have much bigger things to fry here.
When people think themselves, and I know this was the meeting that you had in Washington, right, where you stood in front of Democratic senators and said, you know, the worst rumors you've heard aren't true, I think was a sentence that was reported. At this point, I guess people have to take you at your word that that's true and that there's nothing else. Is that what you are saying?
Yes, of course.
At any point over the course of the past week, have you considered dropping out of the race?
No, not once.
You know, truthfulness or candor or people feeling like they trust you is connected to policy, right? Because if they don't feel like they trust you, if they feel like, well, if you're in a bad situation, you're going to say whatever gets you through the next interview, the next week, then you could do that about policy. You could do that about what your core principle commitments are, right? So for like people that think, you know, he says he didn't know what the tattoo was. This person says he did. He says that he never put hands on this woman. She says he did. You know, people can just decide who they want to believe there.
Yeah.
At this point, I don't think anything would shock anyone. After JFK, after Clinton, after Trump, there's been bipartisan sex scandals of all kinds.
How do you feel about Senator Susan Collins?
I think it's time that we replace her. Yeah, I mean, she's done some good, but there's some things I don't agree with. But that's me. You know, that's how I feel. Yeah. And I don't know if Graham Plattner's going to be the guy or not. I mean, I have no idea. We just have to wait and see and find out.
I'm not really too excited about that kind of thing. I mean, it's a red flag, but at the end of the day, I'll be interested to see what his policies and take are on what we have going on with affordability, housing, and the other things that bother the state.
The voters we talked to said it won't be.
Yeah, so this looks like a compilation put together by Andy O'Brien. Here, we could keep going if you want.
I mean, you get the gist. You get the gist. Didn't see this tweet from Lindsay Fiffield saying that she seems very upset about the Times coverage. She supposedly gave them sources that could corroborate her story, even though they couldn't corroborate it. And I'm also fascinated by the way this story has developed. Like, who is doing this? Because the timing of this stuff is strange. So let's put up this tweet from Lindsay Fiffield. She is the only person to suggest any type of physicality. And again, she wouldn't have called it like abuse, but any type of physicality from Plattner. And she also suggests that he knew what his tattoo was. So I'm sorry, put this back up. I bucked all advice from my friends. Wait a second. There it is. From my friends and resisted my conservative bias and decided to fully trust the Times journalist. I mean, she couldn't even like get through this. She's such like an influencer that she's already in the parentheses are there to address her audience.
Right.
As they left my home and asked I not talk to other outlets, and I insisted then and repeatedly the following weeks I would keep my word and only share this story with them. Now, listen, that right there, that is a weird thing. But then the weeks dragged on. They kept coming back to us saying the editors needed more. I needed to go on the record. Okay. We need more screenshots. Okay. I met every benchmark they set, eager to provide more sources or evidence as needed. I don't know why you wouldn't do all of that from the beginning. After the story went up, I began to ask them, wait, where are the stories from the other women? Where are their accusations of sexual assault? Why am I the focus? Why are there 11 paragraphs dedicated to detailing my work history?
Which is that hilarious because it was such a footnote in the story. It obscures the true nature of her collaboration with Republican operatives and her work in Republican politics. And she's asking, where are their accusations of sexual assault? I don't know, girlfriend.
Well, I mean, listen, if she is suggesting that they lied to her and said that there's 3 other women who will claim sexual assault, you should come in here, she should out them for that.
Yeah.
Because in that instance, the whole thing sounds like a total hit job by these reports. Remember, they've been working on this story for months, according to her. Why does it say nobody could corroborate when I offered them sources that could corroborate? They obviously went to these sources, and those sources could not corroborate. They may be saying to her, well, I'll corroborate, but they couldn't do it. Why did they include an out of context quote from a friend joking, do not call Graham after I called off my wedding? Because she knew I would never.
That's interesting, by the way, because as our friend Ryan Grimm has pointed out, the timing of this so-called relationship with Graham seems to potentially overlap with, and she said this publicly, she was engaged to a man who ended up being gay.
Like, where's the mention that I'd supported local Democrats and most of my family and husband are liberal? I wonder,
what do they think about women for Kavanaugh?
Yeah, exactly.
Fucking idiot.
I'm sort of curious where their positions on Israel are. And I'm only asking this because she's raising it as being exculpatory or somehow burgeoning her legitimacy. The Times also failed to include my mention that I did confide in multiple friends through the years that Graham has been abusive long before he was running for office. Those friends confirmed they told the Times so. Now, this is very suspicious because there's nothing in that Times piece that suggests that they're looking to protect Graham Plattner. No. It is not inconceivable to me that the Plattner campaign had attorneys going like, you haven't really corroborated this, that there's some really shoddy reporting here. It is interesting that that he only confided in her that it was a Totenkopf. One would imagine if this guy was calling it his Totenkopf or Totenkopf, and I would say, incidentally, like, if you asked me what a Totenkopf was and told me the name, I still wouldn't know what it was.
I mean, she works at a conservative dark money group, Independent Women's Forum, that did work on behalf for Susan Collins to help craft her response to the backlash she was going to get for voting for Kavanaugh despite the allegations. So forgive me for not necessarily buying her pearl clutching about victims. And coincidentally, the group that she currently works for, is a fellow at, was that group that I'm speaking about. And she was involved in activism on behalf of Kavanaugh prior to this. It just feels like there's a lot of threads that are coming together that seem less like coincidences and more like a narrative.
Yeah. Did you notice, like we did, a lot of people seem to have knowledge of what was supposedly in this story and were anticipating it, like in a way that I haven't really seen before.
No, there were like a lot of people doing, I guess what the kids call it today is vague posting. So they're like, oh, something is coming out in the New York Times, which would be of interest to people in Maine, which included a lot of quite right-wing people. And to the extent there's a difference, a lot of centrist liberals who all seem to be connected with Neera Tanden in some way.
And Israel. Don't forget, a lot of them are Zionists. I mean, it was a Zionist, centrist, and a right-wing kind of coalition.
Yeah. I have to say, like, if I were like, if the New York Times did a deep dive into my exes, I'm not so sure that, you'd be able to get as good a track record as, Graham Plattner seemed to like have, where like, there seemed to be one particular person who, we can get into, that's very angry, and others, like the more typical ambiguous disappointment from a failed relationship, and then three, thought like this is a great guy. Like that's actually
right. Like, the ones who weren't a Republican operative, and I have to
Emma,
just
please go, because you've been like
I've been on top of this. Okay, so this is. I as a woman, I'll use that card now. I take claims like this incredibly seriously, but I'm also quite supportive, of course, of Graham Plattner's candidacy, especially when we're talking about Susan Collins, okay? But also because his politics are politics that I largely disagree with, or agree with. In the Times, this is just unheard of to me. Here, I'll just read this quote. Mr. Plattner strongly disputes any claims of physical intimidation or altercations, his campaign said. The Times could not independently corroborate Miss Fifield's account of the altercations. Now, that's what a tabloid would do, especially when we find out who this individual is. She is a longtime Republican operative. In fact, in 2018, let's put this up here, the New York Post, she was featured in the New York Post. Lindsay Fifield, she's one of the 2 millennial women who co-founded the group Ladies for Kavanaugh to show their support for the nominee when they felt that view was being left out of the public discourse. Their day jobs are in conservative politics. In the wake of the baseless 11th hour accusations orchestrated to stop Kavanaugh's confirmation, we couldn't stay silent anymore. Because now Fifield, at the time, she was at the Heritage Foundation, but in this current moment, she is a fellow at the Independent Women's Forum. They seem to be circling around Kavanaugh a lot, and not just Kavanaugh, but the key vote in that confirmation for Kavanaugh, which was Susan Collins. It was like a footnote in the New York Times. The only woman who's accusing him of anything physical at all, which is intense grabbing, hard enough to leave marks is what she said, and also locking her in a room when they were in the middle of an argument. She felt intimidated by him. And the Times, as I just read, could not independently corroborate it based on what they found, and yet they still printed it anyway. And I just have to say one more thing,
something to that, because I actually think that they rewrote the story, and it'd be good if we could get the more recent version, because they've actually strengthened the assertion that they could not corroborate it. They've actually reworded it to make it more clear than in the original story, that this is something that we have one person saying it, and there's no other evidence that we can.
Okay, Matt's pulling that up now, but I have to put this out there because this is really important. This isn't just us because we like Plattner's candidacy and we support his candidacy on this front. I've been told from a longtime New York Times reporter yesterday who gave me permission to share this, that many others at the Times, including this person who I spoke with, have said that this, and they know internally that this is a gross hit piece and beneath their reporting standards. And to hear that from somebody who's a longtime New York Times reporter and say that their colleagues also are in agreement on this, I think says everything.
His stories just don't hold up. He said that he got this stuff under control years ago, and some of this stuff is not years ago, and people are concerned that there's more to come. I don't sit in judgment of anybody. You know, all the work that I've done in prisons, and, you know, I'm a second chances, third chances, fourth chances guy. When you're on a redemption arc for real, when you've taken real accountability, when you've actually owned up and you have a track record, or at least you're honest about where you are in your process. My concern is he tried to polish this thing up. I used to be one way, now I'm not. Well, you better be telling the truth about that, and it seems like he's not. And so now this party's got to look in the mirror. Do you want to sign off on the Donald Trump standard of behavior? You got some other people who have very bad behavior in the other party. Is that now our standard? Pause it for a second.
Pause it for a second. Where is the equivalency here? Where is Van Jones's standard that he is judging?
Bill Clinton, I guess, right? It's got to be Bill Clinton.
I mean, it is.
You know, one of Epstein's best friends who also led a massive smear campaign against an intern who he used his position to leverage into a sexual favor. But I'm sure he's talking about how the party needs to clean up its house as it relates to the Clintons, Judea and Samaria.
Dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby. Right. Diddy, dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby. That's basically your whole thing.
Yuck it up. Yuck it up.
What's his redemption arc?
I mean, we honestly.
What if he has like a Israeli flag tattoo or something? Would that be a deal breaker?
For me?
Yeah. Honestly, yeah. That would be Israeli? Yeah, because I don't support genocide, and he doesn't either. And that would show that he was being inconsistent. And he's been very consistent about that, straight across the board.
That's about his ideology. That's about what he's promising. That's what Maine voters care about.
The Nazi tattoo is the strangest thing to me. I mean, like I can like, and I know that you know, I think some of it like on Twitter is bots, but I know that we've had members who have quit the show because they've been upset about our support for Plattner. But put up this thing from this guy that we pulled today. The actual Totenkopf insignias are small and silver. When I saw the large black version on Plattner's chest, I did not recognize it. And all I can say is that, like, we have a listener who was the woman who spoke up at one of his early rallies. And for the first time in public, said that she had been a victim of sexual assault. And then met with Plattner.
When I see blatant smear campaigns from other Democrats against the only candidate who is meaningfully telling us to wake up and do something to stop the abuse.
We have a listener.
Like the establishment is telling me that Graham is not allowed to stand up to anything unevolved now, no matter how much he has changed over 13 years.
We have a listener. What is it?
Black Girl in Maine.
Black Girl in Maine, who has written extensively about Plattner and saying that, you know, like this is a guy who I've been in rooms with who the way he speaks is far more and the organizing he has done is far more dramatic than people who have spoken in a better voice. I mean,
I think the fact that Morris Katz worked on the Mamdani campaign and is also working on the Plattner campaign freaks them out. So there's so many things like the anti-Zionism, the threat to the consultant class, and the threat to just like the overarching project of making sure that people have no hope that they can ask for something better in a state like Maine is paramount here, and what is motivating this. I was told by a longtime New York Times reporter who gave me permission to share this, that many others at the Times, including this person, felt that that piece against Plattner was gross and a hit piece and beneath their reporting standards. And this person told me that there were other reporters who felt the same way. So this isn't just because we agree with Plattner's ideology and because we care about winning.
What a monster. What a disgusting man. Give me a fucking break, man. Give me a break. As I said, worst smear job I've ever seen in my life, but it backfired spectacularly, and if anything, it's helping him out more.
Please welcome to the stage Maine's Democratic nominee for United States Senate, Graham Plattner.
Thank you, Maine. I carried with me the weight of forever wars and the struggle and the alienation that came with it. But I'm also a lucky one who found his way back, who found a living on the sea, in a home, in a community that offered love and redemption.
For Maine voters in a general election, the question is, what is out there? What is not in your possession that you sent to others who may have in their possession? How many concerning pictures and or text messages are in the possession of other people that could be used against you? And I'd like to know if there are pictures, concerning pictures.
Happened long before I decided to run for the United States Senate. I can just tell you, there is nothing out there that is going to be, will run counter to any of the stories that I've talked about openly this entire campaign.
All right, pause it right there. I just want to just step in here. First off, I love the intensity of Mika's look when she is thinking, well, are there dick pics?
Yes, of course. I engaged in consensual romantic activities with adults at an earlier part in my life. That seems like a fairly normal thing most people do. Going to an island with billionaires to possibly assault children is a vastly, vastly different thing.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tonight, you and I are going to be at this DSA rally introducing the New York slate of candidates for DSA.
Yeah.
Just a phenomenal slate. And we're about to be talking after our conversation with Daria Lisa Avila Chevalier. I struggle with it, but I think I got that out. This moment right now, I'm thinking about it. I'm sure you watched Graham Plattner's victory speech after the primary, and the way that he talks about what he had this great line, "I'll be a senator for those who can't afford to buy a senator." Now, DSA isn't supporting Plattner specifically, but I would argue he's a part of a populist left uprising that is adjacent to and working, the energy of DSA is informing the energy of campaigns like that. Zoran's approval rating is skyrocketing. And then we move to Plattner. And I think why there is such a freak out about him in particular is they can't, if he ends up defeating Susan Collins, they can't make that argument anymore that it's just commie New York City. No, this kind of politics can translate anywhere in the country.
Yeah.
And the Democratic consultant class that makes all of their money on commission with big television and digital ad buys are existentially threatened by the idea of people-powered campaigns, in addition to the fact that I'm not sure how much you've covered this, New York Times story about Plattner. It's basically backfired, but it's a coordinated Zionist smear campaign from both the right and the center of and right of the Democratic Party to take down this guy for what he represents.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, this outsider comes in. He's an oyster guy.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere. And it's a blowout, right? So what centrists have to now do is undermine this candidacy and undermine this campaign, even if the alternative means a Republican majority in the Senate, because if Graham Plattner wins, that shows that the electability argument actually favored left populism all along.
Yeah, and I just keep thinking about also what Plattner would represent as a senator. Imagine him if he's on, say, Armed Services Committee, questioning our Pentagon leaders about the endless wars that we're involved in. And he's running very much on that as a buzzword, being against the endless wars. I saw what it meant, and my friends died for nothing. I killed people for nothing. And the power of him kind of reckoning with that, the mental health episodes that he had experienced because he had to reckon with that, and then being able to confront the very decision makers that send so many Americans to die for wars of imperialism and choice, that is going to be a really poignant, I think, visual and a threatening one to the military-industrial complex if he's able to kind of use what he's run on and operate that way as a senator.
Yeah. There are still, not that they're relevant in the main conversation, but there are still skeptics out there.
Yeah.
My argument has always been, look, I have my fair share of scrutiny and skepticism here as well. Having said that, you might not take what he's saying seriously. You might not take his anti-Zionism to be sincere, but it's very clear that very powerful people do see it as a real threat. And that's precisely the reason why they are opening up the faucet, the barrage of manufactured outrage to try to thwart his campaign's success so far.
Yeah.
And the excuses, they come up every day. Somebody comes forward with really proven stuff. Even his business, he's not a businessman at all. His parents supported him. Guy's a loser. Other than that, he might be a very nice guy.
His parents supported him. His parents supported him as an oyster farmer. Who else's parents supported them in their professional life? I was listening to Ryan Grimm speaking about this, and I didn't realize how many casualties his unit saw and what, as a machine gunner, what that really involves and how much on the front lines he was and how many tours he did. Like, the idea that he wouldn't have had unsettling behavior after an experience like that that's just not how that works. You're going to have PTSD.
He's like, the Democrats have meth mouth, and they're okay with it. They look in the mirror, no teeth, it's fine. You got to do what you got to do. I've spent years living in Maine, and Plattner is a vibe. I understand why he's connecting. This guy's voice sounds like a pickup truck driving over gravel. This guy wears LL Bean, jeans. He looks like he drinks a lot and spends a lot of time on a dock. He's got tattoos. He's a Marine. He's a Bernie bro from next door in Vermont. So he's a liar, and he's kind of a fraud, but he's getting away with it because Maine is a poor white New England state. The guy is an ogre. He's a degenerate. He looks like he lives under a bridge, but I don't think that's going to cut it because the Democrats will rally around someone like that.
All right, I think we're good. He's a degenerate. Please.
It's just so funny how often they're the party of the support your troops, and they fucking hate us so much. They hate us.
Quite literally, every single detractor of Graham Plattner has outed themselves as a complete and utter piece of shit.
Well, first of all, let me make clear that I disagreed with the Supreme Court's 6-3 decision overturning Roe v. Wade. The fact is that whether Justice Kavanaugh were confirmed or not, Roe v. Wade would have been overturned given the 6-3 vote.
So, either Susan Collins is lying, or she doesn't remember one of the most consequential Supreme Court decisions of modern history. It was not 6-3, it was 5-4.
The endorsements are not just stickers. When they come from the DSA, they come with organizing apparatus and resources, which is why you don't see endorsements handed out like stickers from these DSA people.
Met him on Bumble, actually, in 2019.
When the New York Times story came out, you were in it, but you didn't go as far in that story as you are today.
Yeah.
Why not?
I didn't want to. I didn't want to have to violate this huge level of privacy to my own life to be able to infer that this person is not honest and trustworthy. I felt really protective of my own privacy throughout this whole process. And it got to a point where my privacy was no longer going to happen. And that was when I kind of just made the decision that, like, I'm going to say my piece and get it out there. I had tried to give the impression that something, worse happened. And that's when it was like, I refused to comment further.
But just to underline the point, you're not coming forward because you have any political motivation.
No, not at all. That was actually one of the huge reasons that I didn't come forward and still struggled. Like, that was a huge moral conflict.
Because you'd like a Democrat to be in the Senate.
Yeah. I like the things that he speaks about. They're important. They're important to people. I'm one of those people.
But at the end of the day, you feel he's not being honest.
He's not being honest, no.
Welcome, Left Reckoners. I'm Matt Leck. With me once again is my co-worker at the Majority Report, Emma Vigland. Emma, thanks for joining Left Reckoning once again.
Thanks so much for having me. And we should say co-workers and colleagues only, not friends.
No, yeah, I know. It's strictly professional. And speaking of that, we have to shift gears a little bit from what was going to be a little bit of a triumphant exclusive. Woman who dated Graham Plattner says he sexually assaulted her. The woman, 41-year-old Maine resident named Jenny Rassicot, detailed the alleged incident to Politico in 3 interviews over the past 2 weeks. Politico also spoke with a man Rassicot dated and confided in the years after the alleged incident and reviewed documents, including emails between Rassicot and her therapist and messages between Rassicot and an acquaintance whom she warned against getting involved with Plattner years before he ran for office. And I'll just note that they do include those messages here as we get through my...
So there is a good amount of corroboration, and this would make sense with what we know about what Lindsay Fifield, who was the only named source in the New York Times piece, said, who was the Republican, operative essentially, who had accused Graham of unsettling behavior and grabbing her. And it appears that perhaps the Times felt it couldn't corroborate it, but Politico was able to corroborate it. This is absolutely devastating. Yeah. I don't know. I feel this is very raw. We're reacting to this right now, but
I do think that these are the highest stakes that exist in politics almost, the presidencies and the Senate and these sorts of offices. And that false accusations can be leveled. I think that is, I frankly, like, the Women for Kavanaugh thing seems to me still like it was part of some kind of orchestrated hit. Now,
yes, and I will say, even if all of the allegations in there were true, there was not an accusation of forcible sexual assault or, physical assault beyond the grabbing aggressively. That was the worst allegation in the piece. And I still maintain that even if that were true, that I don't necessarily view that as disqualifying. This is a different matter. This is a well-corroborated, named source speaking about sexual assault in great detail and with corroboration, and it seems immensely credible to me. And I feel misled by the campaign. I feel that Graham Plattner misled a lot of his supporters. I feel that he lied about there not being anything else that was coming out. We have to flip the Senate. And that was always my contention, was that Graham Plattner and a candidate like him with his politics had the better chance. But he is not proving to be able to tell the truth, it seems like, in these instances. And it seems almost like a certainty at this point that he's going to drop out. It is a devastating, horrendous missed opportunity for the left and for populist politics in this country, and even potentially to unseat Susan Collins, who looked as vulnerable as she's ever been.
Yeah, I mean, the truth about the stakes is, like I said, I do think you can question unfounded allegations particularly, but I also think you couldn't necessarily trust Graham to be honest about this in this moment, if this is true and this story is true. Like, like speaking with Graham and sort of assurances that, they don't have anything and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Is all good, but there's only so much you can do as somebody who's not a reporter.
Troy Jackson, who Graham campaigned for, he seems to have an edge right now in the polling, but there's also a female candidate who I'm less familiar with who might get the nod given what we're looking at right now with this news cycle. So
I like Troy.
Yeah, I like Troy too. But, I there's not really much else to say except that, obviously we believed in Graham's politics and his platform, and that is what I want to put first, as opposed to, anybody's personal character, because it's all a guessing game for the most part, unless we knew Graham completely personally. We just have to judge him on his public positions and the way that he's responded to criticism, which has been with some level of humility, but clearly it's been with a level of dishonesty, because this was, he insisted to Chris Hayes that this was the only thing that was coming out, that there were no new allegations coming. And the worst allegation has now dropped after he's already won the nomination. The details that are in the article also are very lurid, given how she describes the sexual assault occurring, to the point that, it's very difficult to imagine somebody coming up with these details and manufacturing them. And I don't know. Again, we're working this out in real time. I hope that any women that previously watched my commentary in defense of Graham Plattner know that it does weigh heavy on me that we were defending him with the information that we had available, or at least I was as a woman, and that now this information has come out and shows some real, much more serious allegations than we previously knew, and so I take that seriously. I really do. It begs to question what the hell Janet Mills's Oppo team was doing this entire time. If this is what was available to them, if they knew this information, like, it's just incredible how much Plattner, or how much money Janet Mills had and the entire establishment of the Democratic Party on this front. And this is not the kind of information that was going to come out prior to the actual primary. It's just interesting that I don't know, they were so impotent, frankly, as a opposition to him in the primary. And it speaks to the weakness of the Democratic establishment, the candidates that they have available to them, that they were not able to defeat him in the primary if this was always something that was lurking. So, I mean, it's just, Graham has betrayed a lot of people here, a lot of people, a lot of Mainers, and a lot of supporters outside of the state that believed in his vision and believed him when he said that there was nothing new that was coming out.
It was never really about him as the individual.
Not me, us. You want to be corny about it? It's not me, us. Like, you know, but with this, he's made it me. I mean, that's the problem here. And then again, we're reacting, 40 minutes after we got this news. So there's some, raw, unfiltered takes here.
At this point, it is sort of about winning that Senate seat.
Yeah. Lots to figure out in the weeks to come.
Let's shift over to the middle of the country now, where Mallory McMorrow has suspended her campaign after, a precipitous fall in the past month or so.
Ever since she went after Hassan Piker in March. So yesterday afternoon, rumors were swirling about another negative Graham Plattner story that was set to drop. Unlike the New York Times story from a few weeks ago that was written in a tone that sounded like there was a sexual assault allegation in the piece but did not contain that content, it was about his unsettling behavior, and a lot of the worst of what was alleged was aggressive grabbing. And the only named accuser in that piece that had the worst accusations was somebody who has worked in Republican politics. Yeah. So, trigger warning. I'm about to say what the piece alleges. The woman accuses Plattner of entering her home without her consent in 2021. He was intoxicated, she says. The woman accuses Plattner of forcing himself on her when she told him to stop. She accuses him of ejaculating inside her even as she told him not to. Politico corroborated her account with notes to her therapist and messages with a man that she dated in 2022. There are lurid details in the piece that add to the credibility, in my humble opinion. She talks about remembering him knocking over an antique sewing kit, and that kind of sent a chill down my spine just because, there's just details in that ring true, I guess, as a woman. There's an immense amount of betrayal right now. Plattner insisted multiple times that nothing new was coming out. The fact that he knew that this particular woman was interviewed by the New York Times and still went on Chris Hayes and other platforms and insisted that nothing else was coming is unconscionable. Plattner and perhaps the campaign itself has violated the trust of many supporters. I would include myself in that. I'm sorry if there are any women in the audience that feel that I failed them. I take that super seriously. I carry that with me. And I'm sorry. So, I still maintain that what was said in the New York Times was not disqualifying, but what is alleged here just absolutely is. And I'm sorry if myself or anybody, I'm sorry if I contributed to that culture. And so I'm reflecting on that myself. Now, the national media is going to try to blame this on DSA. I'm already seeing this. He was not endorsed by DSA. Like Gonzalez in Colorado, you can't just call someone a DSA-style candidate. They're not a DSA candidate. Because DSA candidates come with infrastructure and internal democracy. And in this case, sorry?
And vetting?
Exactly. In this case, you have to ask this question. Could said DSA infrastructure have worked to vet a candidate like Plattner? I mean, there's an item in the Wall Street Journal this morning about how, he was rushed through a vetting process.
How did you find Graham Plattner?
Well, so, we went through thousands and thousands of prospects. We, through a number of means, assessed just a huge amount of people. Then, Leanne pulled up this video of this guy with an oyster farm.
My name is Graham Plattner, and I live in Sullivan, Maine, the owner of Frenchman Bay Oyster Company.
And then she pulled up his FEC history and saw, the money he'd given to Bernie Sanders and, some other people. And that was enough information to know that we had the best prospect that we'd maybe ever seen.
At this point, you hadn't vetted Graham Plattner. You hadn't done a full scrub of who he is. How did you go about vetting him? And why did you?
We paid a nice firm a whole chunk of money and got some stuff back. Some of what you've seen on the news we got back. Other stuff we didn't.
Did the vetting process turn up the tattoo that became so controversial?
No.
The Reddit posts, did that turn up in the vetting process?
The firm sent us a thing, and it had some of the posts, but it didn't have all of them.
And what did you think about that? How did you think your way through the fact that he had posted these things on social media?
I said none of this will or should stop him from becoming a U.S. Senator.
In hindsight, obviously, that was a massive mistake.
That article's from late June.
Oh, late June. I'm sorry. I guess I just read it. It has new salience now. But do not fall for people trying to tie DSA to this. And the thing is that, to be corny about it, the Bernie, not me, us stuff was always where we were at. This is about the movement and the platform.
Tough news this week. Mm-hmm. And I did want to kind of go over that a little bit, but then hopefully bring us back on a positive, as I like to try to do. So,
sorry, did I get your name? I'm sorry.
Yes, Greg from Peekskill.
Greg's from Peekskill. There you go. There's a train. Okay.
But yeah, so just the first thing, you guys are doing a really good job covering the story. Obviously, being a fan of the show and a fan of y'all, and being a fan of Graham, and more than just his policies, but just this ability to see somebody, a working class person, and have a redemption arc, really meant a lot to me. And you guys even being strong enough to open up the phones today is just another reminder that our principles and our core are what drives us, and it's important to keep that in mind moving forward. And just a quick shout out to the victim as well. She coming out and saying this, even though I remember seeing something that she agrees with him politically, and it was hard for her to do. It's heroic. She did the right thing, and I think anyone going after her character is despicable. And
yeah, no, we have a bunch of people, and they're making SA allegations against him, so we should definitely put yours in there, and you tell us your story, and we'll put that in there.
Everyone has withdrawn their endorsement of Plattner, and I think the allegations are suspicious. I'm just going to say it.
Was he targeted? Oh, there's no question. I mean, you'd have to be brain dead. You'd have to be Mitch McConnell not to see that he was targeted. It was one thing after another. His tattoos, his Reddit posts, his every girlfriend is contacted by the New York Times. Why?
Politico and CNN omitted a key detail from its reporting around the Graham Plattner sexual assault allegations we have learned. If you listen closely there, that she said, we were texting back and forth, and he took something that I said as an invitation to come over. A normal person at that point is,
what did you say?
What'd you say?
Right.
Like, what was the thing that you said to him that he misunderstood? Nowhere does Politico mention what she mentioned to CNN there, that she had said something in the text message exchanges. Jenny Rascott had been, quote, texting Plattner about needing her glute massaged. That detail didn't make our story.
Right.
Glute massage. So within about a half an hour of getting this glute massage text, Plattner is in the house.
If someone entered my home and forcibly me, I would not allow the individual who forcibly, that's violent, right, to remain in my home and sleep it off. But that is what she did. She alleges that he was so drunk that she didn't want to tell him to leave because he might harm someone on the road. He's just forcibly, right? Call the cops. Or, more importantly, get the hell out of the house. But she did neither one of those things. Neither one of those things. Personally, as a woman, if someone me, I wouldn't call them consensually challenged. So she didn't tell her therapist about it at the time. She didn't file a police report. She apparently told an ex-boyfriend who she started dating in 2022 about the incident, although she was very vague about it.
And that's part of, you know, the guilt that I'm feeling, of course. And I know that, like, hindsight's 2020, but I'm constantly trying to be better at what I'm doing here and communicating information to you guys. And I'm still young, I'm still learning.
Because it places us in this unbearable position of having to adjudicate something that should have been adjudicated in a court of law if this actually took place.
But about, like, comments and the censoriousness and the cancellation and all, I mean, we're done with that at this point. We have to give people a way to have a home on the left where they don't feel like they are, you know, moral delinquents if they are saying I need to be a better person. And, like, that is what I think was beautiful about that campaign at the time, and why it's such a betrayal. And I feel personally betrayed a little bit by, frankly, the campaign. And as a woman, I feel an outsized amount of responsibility to have to communicate these kinds of issues with sensitivity. And with this hindsight, obviously, there were things I wish I could have done differently.
Well, and again, you guys are doing a great job covering this.
Like, they tried to tie DSA to the Losing Gonzalez campaign when they're, you know, and that's of course not with scandal, but they're trying to do this with Plattner and say DSA those things should be separated, obviously.
100%.
Really, really appreciate the call, and thanks so much for the galvanizing message.
Of course. And go Knicks. Hey, we're still world champions.
We are. I know. Someone I just IM'd in and said, like, the June just, you know, I flew, I was like Icarus. I flew, the IM didn't say this, I'm saying this. I flew too close to the sun in June. I had too much fun, and now I got sick to start July, and I'm getting punished.
Well, yeah, well, it was what, your second best June, but your liver's worst or something like that?
What'd you say? Yeah, I mean,
it was your second best June, but your liver's worst.
Right.
You know, now we're settling down. So
Right.
we'll recover. We always recover.
Right. Yes. And obviously all of this is just, you know, karma and juju and everything related to, like, my internal anxiety.
The main Democratic Party has made a public plea for Plattner to drop out of the race. And I'm frankly shocked that he hasn't already. Are you?
I guess I'm not shocked, because I do think they're trying to use whatever leverage they think that they have to pick a replacement that is going to match the platform that catapulted him to an essentially 50-point victory over Janet Mills in the primary. I think it's important that whoever takes up the mantle here matches the platform that platform had, or at the very least is closer to it, because frankly, I think while we're immensely, betrayed here on the left, and I feel a lot of responsibility for the fact that our show was supportive of Plattner, and myself as a woman as well, and we can talk about that.
Yeah.
I do think that it's getting lost a little bit in the conversation about his personal conduct, that this is a movement of collectivism and not about individuals, not me, us.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to use that framework to talk about the Plattner campaign here, because that's what the voters wanted. It wasn't about Plattner's voice,
Yeah.
the cut of his jib. It was about what he stood for.
But is that a leverage that Plattner has earned? Like, couldn't that be a conversation that happens after he drops out? It feels like the dropout question is a moral one, that some of that, like, kind of talks above. Like, why can't we just talk about that after he drops out?
I think that's a fair question. I think that there's also a moral question about representing the voters' interests in terms of the platform. But
you don't think
it's
there's any
also
question that he does drop out?
I don't think there's any question.
Yeah.
He cannot withstand this at all, and he should not. He should not. These allegations are credible. They're serious. They're heart-wrenching. I feel for the victim and that she felt that she had to come forward here, because the initial New York Times piece about his unsettling behavior did not contain in it allegations of sexual assault or forcible rape like this Politico article did. It seems like the Times maybe knew that this allegation was out there, but they were unable to corroborate it. So the piece was very odd, because it was written in the tone of something more sinister than was even in the text, and it left us wondering, and maybe I even jumped to some assumptions about why they were stretching. It seemed like they were stretching information.
I just wanted to make clear, like, when you read that story from Politico, did you think, I regret my... You're saying you regretted your support for Plattner immediately from that article because of the new information that came out?
I mean, regret. I'm not
Sorry,
sure.
I shouldn't put that in your mouth. I guess I'm asking, did that make you think back to your previous advocacy and say, I shouldn't have advocated for this man?
I think it made me. I don't know if it made me think I shouldn't have advocated for this man in particular. I think, I made an assessment based on the information that was available, and I'm not. I think that there are a lot of. I am wary of over-focusing on an individual's personal character over their platform. I've said this before. I don't really care if, say, like, Bernie Sanders or AOC go home and they're a secret Nazi, but they go out and they vote for the right things. Like, we're talking about
you don't
politicians
care?
As I mean,
I don't know about that. I think these are the lines that people are talking about. Some people care about that exact thing.
But why would it matter if they're public officials and they're doing the right thing in public? That's an extreme example to essentially say that these are politicians who are people that they're levers of power and they're tools. I'm not here to say that they're like, the greatest person on the planet. It's just that there is an over focus, I think, sometimes on the character of left-wing candidates. Daria-Lisa Avila-Chevalier just faced this. Daria-Lisa Avila-Chevalier. I struggle with it, but I think I got that out.
Former Reddit post, a tattoo that he seemingly, there were conflicting timelines about whether he knew it was linked to Nazism or not, and previous allegations of infidelity. Like, there are people who see those questions of moral character as central to elected office. I guess I wanted to just be like, were there warning signs? I want to ask clearly, were there warning signs the left blew through?
Definitely. I mean, I would say that is a part of my assessment of looking back on it. And yes, there were warning signs about his personal character. And I will say that you see now in the vetting process that was, or the lack thereof, that was highlighted in the Wall Street Journal was immensely concerning. There's hypocrisy.
There's a hypocrisy to go
place.
around. Yeah.
And I'm being forthright in saying that, like, up into a point where we're talking about forcible sexual assault, rape, or an action, a criminal act like that,
Mhm.
you know, I'm less concerned with past Reddit posts since he's apologized for it and
Mhm.
said he's learned. I'm less concerned with you know, internet history, and Daria Lisa is another example of this. Daria Lisa Avila Chevalier. I
Yeah.
struggle with it, but I think I got that out.
Yeah.
But the difference here between, and I don't mean to compare Daria Lisa to Plattner's actions, but I'm just trying to say like why perhaps some of us were skeptical or more bullish on Plattner and trying to be more defensive is, you know, in New York City, DSA was behind those candidates.
Like there does feel like a point of privilege that is baked into this Plattner story. Like I don't think that the same level of grace that was shown by folks on the left to his a story of change is universally applied. Do you?
Well, I'm not speaking for everybody on the left. I don't think it's universally applied. I would 100% agree with you that Plattner gets more grace because he's white and because he's male. But you know what's also one of the whitest states in the country is Maine, and voters in Maine decided that he was more representative of their interests. So there's this two-track conversation. There's a national conversation about hypocrisy about this. Of course, a black candidate could not get away with what Plattner did, but a black candidate isn't running in one of the whitest states in the country in Maine, and that was the context there. Like, all that's really relevant here is what voters in Maine believe, and if you want to say that voters in Maine are more willing than other parts of the country to overlook past Reddit comments that were offensive and racist, then like that's the truth. But my political project is about winning power. I care about winning power, and I care about winning power with candidates who I think have the right platform and the right ideas to transform the Democratic Party. I was making a forceful case for him, again, because this is not about someone's individual character. In my view, this is about a political movement, and what he stood for still remains. And that's what I want to see represented on a policy level, not on his individual character, on a policy level. That's what needs to be represented, because the voters in Maine resoundingly said what I want to see represented on a policy level, not on his individual character, on a policy level.
Do you think Plattner should have a role in shaping what happens next?
Plattner, no, but his the campaign.
I guess I wasn't asking
I think,
specifically. I should say campaign.
Yeah, I think that they should. I mean, they have the leverage, and as long as it's about the platform, they won the primary.
I guess.
I mean, what situation? What other situation? Who should decide instead? Who should be the candidate?
So I guess I'm really just asking about the steps.
Well, I mean, look, you know, I if in an ideal world, I'd love if he was able to just completely drop out and we wouldn't hear from him again, and the campaign infrastructure could be the piece, the actors here that have the leverage. Although, of course, there are questions about who knew for that long, and like you think I'm thrilled about this? I mean, I stuck my neck out for this campaign, and I received assurances that nothing new was coming. And
I wanted to ask about that. Like, you know, you asked about those questions. Like, what did you hear from that campaign? You received those assurances that there wouldn't be this type of moment?
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, and also he was on Chris Hayes and publicly said this as well, and that was kind of the context for any kind of internal discussions on that, or like what I had heard. I'm not gonna. It's been a whirlwind 48 hours. I don't remember exactly, but yeah, you know, that was what the understanding was like, this is all they've got. Okay. They unloaded this before the primary voting process happened, and so that was kind of what I believed. Now I'm reassessing that. It's painful and difficult. It's professionally embarrassing, of course, but you know, that is where that is what I believed. I didn't think that there was something that this serious that was going to be coming down.
You know, you mentioned the kind of political project. Is there a post-Plattner choice?
I think Troy Jackson is the candidate that there are some people are excited about. I mean, I know that he got the main DSA endorsement for governor.
Kind of a wild question, because I really don't know what your answer is to it. When was the last time you spoke with Graham Plattner?
I've never spoken with Graham Plattner off air, so it would be the last time we interviewed him.
When was, like, I know you spoke to him in August. Did you speak to him after that?
No.
Huh.
then if that was our last interview, honestly, we conduct, many interviews in a week, so I just forget. Whenever our last interview was, that was the last time I've spoken to Graham. I've never spoken to him behind the scenes either.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you were one of the first outlets, the Majority Report, to give him an interview back when he announced in August of 2025.
So this is...
in fact, what's very funny is that it was a couple of years ago now. And I was I would call in some days when I was out on the oyster farm. And the one day that I actually made it through, a thunderstorm hit in the exact...
And he was a fan of the Majority Report. It was actually this like very funny interview where you were like, you've called in from your oyster boat.
Same moment. And so I was trying to talk to Sam while the quality was just horrific.
Before. Yes. And I feel like since that interview, you've become a Plattner supporter until very recently. What made these allegations different to you?
Forcible rape and sexual assault. I mean, prior to this allegation, the New York Times piece spoke about unsettling behavior, and the worst of the accusation in that piece was about aggressive grabbing and excessive drinking. And a lot of what I read in that piece sounded like the symptoms of PTSD that he had described. And I felt that it's important that the left is an open space for veterans who've experienced that kind of trauma so that they can have some sort of redemption arc. And I bought into that narrative. As soon as I read the piece in Politico, I knew that he had to drop out of the race. And I believed the woman immediately. I mean, the details were lurid. The details that are in the article also are very lurid. Details were lurid. There were, as you say, there were lurid details in the piece. Like it still sends a chill down my spine when she talks about him knocking over her antique sewing kit. I mean, just as a woman, you hear certain details. She talks about remembering him knocking over an antique sewing kit. And that kind of sent a chill down my spine just because, there's just details in that ring true, I guess, as a woman. You kind of understand, like, okay, I get what happened here. And so, I do feel as a supporter of Plattner's campaign, I want to emphasize this because the Bernie Sanders movement and everything that's come from it, really, I would, the mainstreaming of democratic socialist ideas, and Plattner was not a DSA candidate, which is maybe something we can get into if you'd like.
I guess the question for me is how much a person or a pundit or whoever is like willing to compromise to get the policies they believe in place. Like, I feel like I need to say here, like, you and I are coming from slightly different places here, which is, I think we're both progressive people. But I've been like really grappling with Graham Plattner's rise for months. I went back, Tuesday, October 21st, after the Nazi tattoo allegations came out. My text to this, friend is, rip to this guy. Like, I was like, he's going to have to go, right? There's a Nazi tattoo. And for me, that felt like this has to be a red line, right? And I think his response was really telling. His response was, maybe not. Janet Mills, the governor, is claiming he's too far left and a Nazi. I think this is just Mills' dirty tricks. Like, that's where I began to kind of shift in my mind, like, as a person, as a woman, because it just gave me pause. I was like, is this campaign like shot through with a kind of misogyny that I need to grapple with? Like, did you not see those kind of like blinking warning signs?
Well, I still, honestly, frankly, the tattoo thing, it seems like he was probably not forthright about when he knew about it. But again, I think you can look back on that now and say, yes, perhaps there's an arrogance and a level of, narcissism that anybody that runs for public office has, but perhaps that it's at a different level here that he thought he could get away with anything. I mean, his Reddit history showed that he was quite left wing. And so I did think that was a contradiction. And I was dismissive of the tattoo for that very reason. And I think the Nazi thing was a bit overplayed because of his desire to paint him as an anti-Semite because he wants to cut off arms to Israel. I am not really questioning, honestly, his ideology at this point. I am now questioning that and now believe he's a liar and believe that he's a rapist. So, like, that's a different level, and that's something It's a separate question in my view, and that's what makes it disqualifying. This New York Times piece, when it came out, it was so oddly written. I'm not sure if you would agree with this, because it was written in the tone that there was a sexual assault allegation, but there was not a sexual assault allegation in the piece. And my theory now is that the Times had heard about this allegation, but they were unable to corroborate it, and that's why the piece came off so oddly. But Plattner must have known. He knew. But you then go on television and Chris Hayes and, you say there's nothing coming out definitively.
When you know this woman is out there quoted in the Times piece and could say more.
That is where it is like unconscionable in my view. And and shows a pattern of lying and narcissism and like this kind of driving desire for glory and charging ahead with a carelessness that betrayed so many supporters, so many Mainers.
Do we know who's waiting in the wings?
I think Troy Jackson is the favored candidate here. Troy Jackson was endorsed by DSA in Maine for governor.
Both Democratic factions that have been fighting for and against Graham Plattner have like fumbled the ball here pretty badly. And then you've got Graham Plattner supporters. And I think you could argue the folks who thought what Maine wants and needs is a street fighting dirtbag, like they should also be eating crow right now. Like, well, neither side was right.
They voted for him.
Yeah. I mean, okay. But
yeah, overwhelmingly.
I think if both sides here could recognize they made some missteps and like be humble, like maybe they can work together to fix this thing.
I lay the blame in maybe different ways. It's just the ideological battle is what I wish we could be foregrounding. And unfortunately, Graham Plattner, due to his selfishness, has made it a different conversation.
How much are you questioning at this point? There was reporting that, Plattner was at a fundraiser with Ro Khanna out in California, which is not a very like local Maine thing. That's like, going to billionaires and asking for money. So it's like, I just wonder.
But he's not taking corporate back money. At the very least, that's fundraising from individuals. But I understand. Yeah. I mean,
I just wonder if you're like reflecting more on like other stuff. Like, was it an illusion, the working class oyster farmer thing? Was that actually just like a really good like magic trick?
A brand? I mean, I'm less concerned about the brand. I'm more concerned about the platform. I think there's nothing that changes in terms of like what Maine voters supported in the platform.
Well, they weren't voting for that stuff necessarily. They were voting for a guy, right? They were voting for a guy.
I don't agree. I think that like there's a lot of I don't necessarily think that we should characterize that in terms of Maine voters. They talk about his platform. They even say that they were willing to put aside certain parts about his personal character because he supported things that they supported. Like there's a dismissiveness about voters in the national press right now that I don't understand.
Well, it's interesting because I just got off the line with like this Maine voter, and she really did seem to have been like behind a guy. Like he was just so charismatic. I loved this guy, and it felt like she had defended him through a whole bunch of stuff. And she wasn't talking about the Green New Deal. She wasn't talking about, she liked him. That's what it was. And that was a powerful part of his appeal.
I think he did have charisma, and he was a good communicator of the very issues that Maine voters care about.
Yeah. I don't know how you're feeling in this moment. If you go to the Majority Report subreddit, like you can find comments from a few months ago basically saying we should thank Emma Vigeland because she vigorously defended Graham Plattner.
Yes.
Through all of these scandals. She's a primary reason he was able to weather those scandals and continue on.
Yeah, I don't feel great. I don't feel awesome. Yeah, it's an interesting it's an interesting time in my life, honestly.
Do you feel betrayed?
I do feel absolutely betrayed. I think I said that on air as well. I feel an immense amount of betrayal right now. I don't care about his personal character for the most part until it crosses a line like this. Like everybody in DC is a scumbag for the most part. It's about what you stand for and what you fight for. And
that's so dark though. To be like, I expect nothing from these people, like from a moral standpoint. Like I just wonder what we lose when like we approach things like they're all dirtbags. No, I know, but like I'm just saying like when we expect them all to be jerks, like,
That's the nature of it's the nature of politics. There's a narcissism that's embedded in it. I don't care what they feel in their heart. I care what they vote for and they fight for.
I hear you. I mean, I feel like the place where I get stuck is like, are we becoming more cynical in a bid to beat cynicism? And is that a winning strategy?
I don't think it's cynicism. I think it's focus. I think it's focus on what matters. I think it's focus on winning. I mean, we're talking about playing a game and it doesn't matter. I mean, we've got to win. Like, first we have to win.
But if you win by empowering bad people, it's like,
well, I've abandoned this person once they were accused of rape, and I did not think that the character concerns that were prior to this amounted to something that was disqualifying, and now this is disqualifying. Well, I don't want to make it about me, but it's, I'm getting a lot of online criticism right now, and some of it I don't think is very fair, but it's the name of the game.
I mean, here's the thing.
What does weigh heavy on me is just like my responsibility as a woman to our audience. I didn't think that the past Reddit posts were disqualifying because he'd apologized for them. And I think that there was an attraction to a redemption arc for me at the very least.
It's like, I remember like, months ago asking something like fairly benign on Blue Sky. And it's like, I got torn to shreds. And Matt was like, Matt agreed. He was like, yeah, I went on and I just asked a question and I got like destroyed for asking a question about Graham Plattner. And I say this, and I'm going to be honest with you. I know personally of people who have committed sexual assault in this exact same way, where they get blackout drunk and they do this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I referenced this joke on the show the other day, but like Bottoms in the movie, Rachel Sennett's character asks a group of girls, have you ever been sexually assaulted? And no one raises their hand. She goes, gray area stuff counts too. And then everybody raises their hand.
Yes.
Like, of course, I'm sure you and I have probably had experiences that were like not fully, I have, but like not, I wouldn't call it an assault, but it's just like college, gray area, drinking, whatever. Like I'm very focused, I think, on like winning power, winning.
Yeah.
That's and like perhaps I'm a jock about it, but maybe that's my own blind spot really about Plattner was I just care so much about winning. Like so many of these conversations don't matter unless we win. Perhaps, the aggressiveness with which we push back on the overfocus of about personal character is because I care so much about changing the country.
To be honest with you, like, I have always been 80-20 on Plattner. I've said this from the beginning. And I one thing Sam said to me when he came on my show, earlier in the year was he said as an aside, like, I might be biased because Graham Plattner was a fan of Michael Brooks and he also was a fan of this show.
You are not apparently just a listener to the Majority Report. You previously called in, which is amazing.
Hey, love listen to your show.
It's interesting having a listener on the program. It's always fun.
Yeah, it's always good to talk with listeners.
I mean, as a longtime fan of the show.
And that has definitely stuck with me because I do think, and I say this with all the love, that you and Sam had rose-colored glasses on when it came to this candidate. You did. As someone who looks to y'all for like the wonky, back, like understanding these candidates, like it does feel like, because he was a fan, it maybe like colored your coverage of him.
I'm sure. Well, for me, it added to the credibility that he wasn't a secret Nazi, and I still don't really question.
Yeah.
I don't really question his ideology. I question his character now. Yes, we had rose-colored glasses about him and some of this stuff, but I think for me, I was very focused on winning, and I was convinced that he was the best candidate to do that. Now, like what's happening right now, which I don't really fully think is fair, is like I'm also it's being said in some corners of the internet that I'm racist for because I said on this podcast that I don't care if AOC or Bernie are secret Nazis as long as they vote the right way, basically, like as a hyperbolic way to make my point. Perhaps I could have said it more artfully, but my point is that I don't care that much about personal character up to a point. I think it's puritanical sometimes in this society. And there was this national influencer online conversation about Graham Plattner that seemed to have no interest in what the voters of Maine wanted.
Yeah.
It's just about like, I get to feel morally superior because
Exactly.
I am better than Graham and I get a bad vibe from him and whatever.
Now, there were definitely some people who felt like the red flags and all the other scandals that had come up were indicative of somebody who was not taking full account for what they what Plattner had done years before, and that's a judgment call, and their judgment was correct in this instance.
It's not on you, Emma. It's not on me. It's not on random people online to vet candidates, right? Like, it is actually not on you, one person, to vet the candidate, right? I think.
Has this changed you? Like, as a reporter, as a journalist?
I mean, it's been 36 hours. Of course, it's changed me to a degree. But yeah, no, like I also, journalists, I eschew that term. Like, I am a communicator of politics. I give my opinion. I literally, I go to DSA rallies and do volunteer work and shows a pattern of lying and narcissism and like this kind of driving desire for glory and charging ahead with a carelessness that betrayed so many supporters, so many Mainers,